Which pull-up grip is the best? Which grows the most muscle? Which one's the best for your elbows? First, we'll discuss some of the relevant literature, I'll explain my personal view, and finally I'll give you some tips on how to choose between the different grip variations for pull-ups in your training. So what about muscle activation? A 2016 article in the Journal of Electromyography and Kinesiology by authors Dickey et al. Compared muscle activation across 4 different grip types in pull-ups: the supinated or chin-up grip, pronated or pull-up grip, neutral grip, and a rope grip. Here are the conclusions of their study. Peak and average EMG of the brachioradialis, biceps brachii, middle deltoid, upper pectoralis major, lower trapezius, latissimus dorsi, and infraspinatus was similar across all pull-up variations. Furthermore, peak EMG muscle activation appears to be sufficient to promote adaptation in the brachioradialis, biceps brachii, latissimus dorsi, and infraspinatus muscles, regardless of hand orientation. So the TLDR from this study is, all of them are great back and arm builders, none of them is objectively the best. And this makes sense intuitively. Some people only do chin-ups and are very strong. Some people only do pull-ups and are also very strong. The differences in their strengths and muscular development are going to have much more to do with variation in relative limb lengths than in which grip variation they chose. These are things that can't be controlled for in their experiments because the sample sizes are just too small. One of the key lessons I'm hoping to teach with this channel is the value of self-learning. Just try it yourself. Your own experience is really the best teacher when it comes to health and fitness. Better than me, better than anyone out there. Things that work for me or for someone else, or even that worked in a randomized controlled trial of 20 untrained college-age male individuals, will not necessarily work for you. The only way to really know is to try. This is true in fitness, and this is true in life. If you want to learn about something, do some preliminary research, consult science and expert opinions, but then just start doing it. Most people stop before that last critical step and end up learning nothing of substance at all. It's especially problematic when it comes to fitness. Knowing about how to do pull-ups doesn't make you stronger. Doing pull-ups is what actually makes you stronger. So now that my rant is over, I'll give you some practical tips on how I personally choose between the different grip variations when performing pull-ups. Number 1 is that for progressive overload, you need to have form standards. To measure your progress over the weeks and years, don't constantly shift variations unless you're tracking those changes in variations as well. I personally like the chin-up grip slightly wider than shoulder width. It feels great on my elbows, and it affords me the largest range of motion, and I feel an amazing contraction in my lats at the top position. I avoid momentum on the way up, I touch my chin to the wall, and I always perform them on the exact same pull-up bar. I grip in the exact same position, and I use the same exercise order each workout. If I do change the order, which happens roughly quarterly, I note that down in my training log because my performance will definitely be different if I've already done a pulling exercise beforehand. Once my progress stalls on one variation, rigorously measured and controlled for, which is usually after a period of like 6 months, I'll drop the weight a bit and switch to a different grip variation. But my session-to-session numbers are standardized in both form and grip type so that they're actually comparable. I'm also simultaneously programming unweighted pull-ups on a rotating bar for more of a grip focus. Tip 2 is don't bother with variations that cause you shoulder or elbow pain. Life is too short to be injured, and golfer's elbow is a real problem among pulling athletes. If one grip style aggravates your elbows and another does not, just forget about it. Come back to it when you're stronger, and maybe it won't be an issue anymore. A bit of specific advice here, rings or rotating handles can also be very useful if you have elbow or shoulder pain because they let you rotate freely throughout the range of motion. Most people find chin-ups a bit more comfortable at the top position and less comfortable on the shoulders at the bottom, and most people find pull-ups less comfortable on the elbows at the top and more comfortable at the bottom. For this reason, rings are my favorite, but at my home, I don't have a good way to set up rings without my weights touching the floor when I'm in the bottom position, so that's obviously a deal breaker, and so I do bar chin-ups. Find the best option that you can and get to work. Tip 3 is that if 2 variations feel relatively equal, prioritize the one that lets you get a larger range of motion. For me, that's the chin-up, but for you it might be different, especially if you have trouble bringing your arms all the way above your head. But strength training through the largest reasonable range of motion as possible should be your goal. Tip number 4 is that you can get pull-up grip variation when your focus is not on progressive overload. For example, throughout the day, each time I pass my pull-up bar, I might hop on and do a few pull-ups. I also perform pull-ups as part of my warm-up for climbing sessions. At these times, I vary the grips, tempo, and form frequently because progressive overload is not the focus. I'm performing them merely to warm up, or to activate, or just get a wee bit more volume on the back muscles. The benefit of greater variety comes at the expense of not being able to standardize and track rigorously enough for progressive overload to actually work. Tip number 5 is that extremely wide hand positions do feel quite different than all the other aforementioned ones. If your hands are more than 1.5 shoulder widths apart, there's a lot more tension pulling your shoulders apart like this, and some people really like this and some don't. Personally, I find it a bit awkward. I don't completely avoid them, so I will do them for shorter sets as mentioned previously, but I've never used them as my primary lift variation, and I have no plans to. I also get a lot of this awkward, off-axis style pulling from climbing, so I'm not too worried about missing out on it. Ultimately, we only have so much time and energy to train, so focusing on fewer variations with higher quality is often the best way to go. Over the years, you can experiment with many variations, but it's best to, in a given 3 to 6 month cycle, work on a limited number of highly standardized movements that you can make substantial progress in. Thanks for watching. I hope this helps you. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.